Hello, everybody. It's Bob Kiser with Perfect Detours on WGHC 98.3 FM. So, if you're tuning in for the first time, this show, Perfect Detours, so each week we explore how to turn those perfectly imperfect moments into living a life beyond our wildest dream. The question becomes, how would your life be different if you saw everything as pointing you towards becoming the perfect you? And that actually the universe was conspiring for you. That's what the show's about. So if this is your first time tuning in, welcome. I'm really glad you're here. If you've been listening, thank you for listening again. We're again on WGHC 98.3, and this is a community radio station. So your voice we want to hear. So why am I doing this show? Seriously. So I think too many good-hearted souls lose their way and they give up because of different paths that we've taken. And let me rephrase it, different paths I've taken. There's been times in my life where I felt I was at the end of the road. There's nowhere else to go. I've messed this up royally. And looking back at where I'm at now, that was not the case. In fact, some of those moments were the most defining moments, some of those moments that gave me opportunities to push forward into this area of growth that I didn't even know was possible. And this show is about to give us all encouragement and to share these stories that we each have about these perfect detours, the name of the show. So I want the show to be a vehicle for all of us to share with each other personally how we've turned those imperfect experiences into those perfect detours. So Anthony Navarro and Jeff Miller from Talk Out Loud podcast are here tonight to share their experiences with their perfect detours. And when we were pre-briefing, as I share each week that I pre-brief with my guests to kind of talk about how are we going to share their story, they had the brilliant idea to talk about instinct and intuition. And we're going to talk about how instinct and intuition play into these perfect detours that we go on in life. So if you've listened to this show, you know that I am one for definitions. So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page about this stuff. So intuition, this is what it says in the dictionary. It says the ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning, versus instinct, an innate or typically fixed pattern of behavior in animals in response to certain stimuli, with the idea, again, that I'm not sure there's conscious reasoning, it's just a reaction. So in these moments of growth, there have been moments, I will say, in my life where intuition has definitely played a part. Whether it was just that weird feeling of, I shouldn't go left, I should go right here. Or at one point, I was doing a show one time. There used to be a dinner theater in town called Tommy Gunn's Garage. Skip, did you work there? I had this weird vision of maybe you working there. It was a really cool place, actually. It was interactive. And the guest came to a 1920s speakeasy on the south side of Chicago. And in order to get in the door, you had to have the password and all this kind of stuff. And we sang and danced, and actually we served dinners too. And I was babyface, and it was a great gig. I loved the gig, actually. But I was setting up one time for a show, preparing, and literally this voice was like, "You're done here," and we're done. Scene. And I was like, what? And it was just this feeling of I'm done. And I walked up to the owner. I said, well, I know I probably have to work tonight because I'm on the schedule, and I will work until you can find a replacement, but I'm done. I'm done here. And she just would look at me like, what? I was like, yeah, I can't really explain it. I'm done. And at that point, I think I was jumping into coaching and all this other stuff, but it was just this feeling of I can't describe where it came from. It was just this intuition or this voice that was just we're done here. It's time for our guests. So my guests are Jeff Miller and Anthony Navarro. They are the co-host of Talk Out Loud, the podcast, where the LGBTQIA plus community has center stage to tell their stories. They also craft experiences with their event production company, lighting up events in Chicago, Los Angeles, and nationwide. Whether a story being told through a wedding, a corporate event, social engagement, or an episode of the podcast. They are driven with intention and purpose to make that story come to life. They're really about stories. As I'm reading this intro, you've guessed it. They are the story people, which is so cool. But in order to create the life that they are living now, both professionally and personally, they have had to follow their instincts, nice wording, to make changes in order for new opportunities and growth to happen and be open to where that takes them. And just a little background. So I've known Jeff for a while, and Anthony I just met a couple months ago, and yeah, just dear people. So I'm actually so excited I can't talk, which is so weird for me. So that's a good thing. So that's a compliment for you too. Skip, I know you're going to say something, so Skip, just don't even say anything. And Skipism. Okay, so we're to the present time, so let's back up a little bit. And how did we get here? And as you know, the show is Perfect Detours, so talk to us a little bit about the detours in your life. And Anthony, I was just listening to your podcast, which I love, is that, so some of the people on your podcast, like Brandon Wolf, hello, what a great episode.
He was wonderful. That was a great interview with him.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, he was a survivor of the Pulse nightclub
shooting.
Yeah. So it was a very inspirational podcast. And also then, I mean, I texted you both about the podcast with 7 Graham, which was just, there's so much education going on with your podcast. Okay, so Anthony, how did you get to here? Like, I was listening to your podcast, and you have quite a story because you shared your story. And tell us, how did you get here?
Yeah, so I mean, for starters, I guess, like, kind of going back to, when I was in college. So I went to school. I always thought that I was going to be a broadcast journalist. Like, my thought was that I was going to co-host the Today Show. And, there were some things that happened.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe there still might be time. But what happened was there was just sort of this weird set of circumstances where I thought I was going to go far away to school, to college, and it just didn't work out. There was something, as I was going through this process to get into school, something kept calling me to DePaul. Now, I'm born and raised in Chicago. So to go to DePaul, there sort of was this, this feeling of, like, pride to be able to be, a Chicagoan going into, to school at DePaul, had this sort of prestigious, university. And I kind of went with it. I really wasn't sure why I was supposed to go there. And the why really didn't present itself until a couple years later when my mom got sick. And because I was close to home, I was able to be with her through what, happened to be the last 2 years of her life. So, it really wasn't clear what I was supposed to do sort of after that. And what I've always known, because my family was in the hospitality industry, after I, graduated from college, I wasn't sure what to do. And my family was always in hospitality. So I wound up getting a job in a hotel, working in catering sales, and sort of began this career in event planning, where I worked in catering sales, and then I moved into working in restaurants, and then to off-premise catering, which, then led, following this sort of, intuition or desire to start my own company. And, that was like a whole experience in and of itself, just sort of the process that I had to go through to get that. But that was sort of how, I got there, and now, now we're here.
Right. So. And we're going to come back, Anthony, to this. So you said you heard a voice, and you hear voice. You've heard a voice 3 or 4 times I know of in your life. So we're going to come back to that because I'm really interested to know what that voice is. And but Jeff, so I am interested. So well, first of all, how did you get here? I'll let you say it in your own words, and then I have a really specific question. But I'll let you talk first because you're the guest.
How did I get here to Chicago, or
just here in general? So how did you get to where you are today in your life? And I don't think I mentioned this. I'm not sure if people who don't know you, that you are married. So you are married as a couple. So a lot of changes have happened for you, Jeff, in the last like 4 or 5 years. Or actually probably more than that. But I mean, so the question is, how did you get to here with the podcast? So what led you up to here?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say there's been rapid change probably in my life over the last 8 years, making up for a lot of change that I held off on making for a long time. And so I grew up in the Midwest, South Bend, Indiana, and then took a detour down to South Florida, Miami, Fort Lauderdale for a while, worked in the fashion industry, and then kind of missed the Midwest, wanted to be closer back to my roots. And so kind of did a geographic change up to Chicago, was able to kind of do a pivot within the work I was doing, which I enjoyed. I mean, I always loved clothes and just design and stuff like that. But there was a part of me that was not really identifying with my true self, and I was using it as something to like protect myself with. I used fashion as an armor, and there was a lot of surface stuff, and another lack of identifying with who I was at my core soul being. And lo and behold, that sorry.
I just had a thought that's so interesting because fashion, I had never thought about that. Either can be an armor to kind of hide yourself, or fashion can be an expression of who you actually are. So it just popped in my head.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I still love fashion. I love design. I love details. I love designing and making. I love creating, to be honest.
Yes.
And so that's still there. But how am I identifying it with like on a surface level, or actually is fear driving that? Is it fear that's driving that, or is it more of something that inside of me that wants to be expressed in a beautiful way? And that detour to Chicago, actually, we didn't know it, but Anthony and I were working right across the street from each other when I did that geographical change. And about being there after maybe like my third week or so, some of the other people that got to know me said, "Hey, we're gonna go out for drinks after work." And lo and behold, we went to Lake Colonial one evening, and I saw this guy smiling behind the bar who was bartending, entertaining, and that was our first meet for Anthony and myself.
Oh, I love it.
So we have. I mean, just to kind of summarize this, we had a wonderful winter that year together here in Chicago. And we dated, and we were in our mid-20s, and it was fun. We bounced around town and did what you do. He opened up like part of me to like relate to like more of a deeper level of myself that I had kind of abandoned over the years. And the thing was, I experienced love for the first time, to be honest. Besides that, I've had for my parents, that is, like really love from someone, emotionally that you were interested in to date. And I felt very uncomfortable around that because I was really uncomfortable with myself, and somebody who was that comfortable with me kind of forced me to look within myself. So, I eventually, to much to sadness, I had to push him out of my life. So there was, we went our separate ways for 10 years. And there was a lot of unhappiness that found me leaving, eventually packing my bags, giving up in Chicago, and basically ending up on a farm in Michigan, out of all places.
Love that. That's where my questions are lie. But thank you for sharing all of that. Thank you to both of you for sharing your stories. It's so fascinating. And here's a question though that I think sometimes when we have those separations in relationships, we think that's a bad thing or whatever it may be. And I feel like sometimes people have to go do their own thing before they come back. But what a really cool gift to have someone open up opportunities for you, and then for you to go figure those out. Yeah.
So anyone who's listening right now, Anthony and I are both like nodding 100% with you in agreement right now.
We have to mention,
And I think also with we're talking about instincts and intuition today, having that patience, for me, there's been a dance of patience and wisdom with that, right? Like and just that we talk about the hindsight is 20/20. And sometimes I have to just wait for the rest of the story. Like, that Paul Harvey we talk about, right?
Yeah.
And now like I know all these experiences, and they were neither, like sometimes we want to judge things that are being good or bad. They were neutral. Right. What I do with them today, that's what matters. And how I allow that to me. They are a culmination of who and what I am today that culminate into what I am today in this exact moment, in my experience.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had moments where I'm like, why is the answer not coming to me? And I feel like the universe goes, Bob, if we gave you the answer, you'd mess it up. So just hold on. We'll give you the answer when it's time. So, but yeah. So I have one more question for you, Jeff, and then we're going to jump into a different topic. But I started thinking about, as we're jumping into intuition and instincts, that you spent a lot of time on a farm in Michigan.
Yeah.
And I got to thinking that the nature, the earth, it might be a connector to connecting to intuition. And I just want to kind of throw out a theory to you, or ask you about a hypothesis that I have is, did your time on the farm maybe cultivate your intuition?
Oh, absolutely. I love that you use the word cultivate. There is so much. I remember, so when I first, so this farm was a Welch's grape farm, and we also had a melon stand. We had a little farmer's market, and I realized that our season we could sell more melons if we added sweet corn. And so I remember when the first box of Harris sweet corn seeds arrived, for my first year I was going to do it, and I just saw this little tiny seed, and just about how this seed was programmed to do its thing, right?
Yes.
And in nature, there is so much intelligence and intention and organization that it's inherent. And when you're out there and you're just observing it, and honestly, even like this was a small farm, and so the tractors we had were, from the 1960s, 1950s, little, smaller machines, and I would have to go online and go on YouTube to watch videos on how to repair them myself. I had and it was this intelligence to these old machines, because there wasn't computers to them, so I couldn't really break something. But I would dive in, and just so I would see that would mimic nature, and then I'd be out there cultivating the field with these old machines, so that these plants that could grow and do their thing and not be not losing nutrition from weeds taking away the water, or the nutrients from the soil. There was definitely time to sit, listen, and learn. That has really helped me. I really have to make sure that I allow space to be able to back in nature as part of my spiritual practice today to get back to that.
Yeah. Jeff, that's a whole book right there. You should write a book on that. Put that in mind. So everyone listening, we're getting these conversations, the three of us, and then I just want to keep talking forever and ever. But because of the show, I'm going to kind of focus us more into a different realm. And Anthony, I want to go back to these voices. And because I think this is fascinating, and I was listening to your podcast, and I heard you talk about the big voice specifically for your company and how to focus your company. And I was like, wow, I have that voice too. So can you speak a little bit about maybe the first couple times you heard it, and then maybe now the faith you have in that, or how you use that?
Sure. So, it's interesting. So similar to what Jeff was just talking about in terms of having to go to nature to get quiet and get connected. So I didn't have that opportunity. I was in the city. So what I found, though, was there were certain practices that I started. One of them was taking a morning walk along the lakefront, or taking time during the day to just put, headphones on, turn music on. And sometimes it would be walking down Michigan Avenue or walking down State Street. And just even in the middle of all of this, hecticness, all of these people and this craziness, I was just getting in the zone, meaning I would just focus, my thoughts, knowing that I had this idea, the idea being that I wanted to own my own business. Coming from a family of entrepreneurs, it just felt like a natural thing. I never knew what the company was. I remember that season that Jeff and I dated in our 20s, I was like, well, maybe I'll be a home stager, or maybe I'll throw house parties for people. I wasn't sure what it was, but I knew that it was this, I knew that it was just, it had some sort of focus around me running a business. And what eventually happened was, those practices that I found, taking time for these walks, taking time, I would find myself in Starbucks, just journaling, just, coming up with brainstorming ideas, brainstorming names. And eventually, I would start hearing, sort of this intuition, or that sort of gut instinct, or this voice that was telling me, this is the direction. So eventually, it took about a year for me to really start honing in on what it was. And I don't really remember the exact moment, but I came up with this concept that I wanted to plan events for people in their homes or in unique spaces where we would liven up their party. And all of a sudden, that was the name of the company, what became Liven It Up Events, which, when I went on, to check if the domain was available, that was available. So it was like, okay, this is like the perfect,
that's the sign.
It's just the perfect, sort of set of circumstances for me to move forward with that.
That's amazing. That's so cool. And I think that actually you're speaking to the journaling. There's a coaching exercise, and it comes from a book called The Artist Way by Julian Cameron.
Yeah.
And she talks about the morning pages, and I'm a huge proponent of the morning pages, and it kind of it helps get those inner critics out of the way and gets that voices out. So the morning pages, for anybody who does not know what these are, it's 3 pages stream of consciousness that you write. And it's like, I'm writing this, I heard this on Bob's show, this is stupid, why am I writing this, I need to get eggs. And you do that for 3 whole pages. And usually it was the last 2 paragraphs where I was like, I didn't know I was thinking that, or that was the idea that I didn't even know I could think of. I think that what you're speaking to, Anthony, is this whole idea of like kind of stripping away those, I call them guards, I call them my loud voices, in order to then, I think we wear them out, and all of a sudden that small voice that actually has that knowledge. But yeah.
So it's so funny because that is exactly the book that I was using to do these journaling exercises. It was the exact same thing. It's actually in that cabinet back there.
I think all of us have it. It is one of the best books I have ever read, and I actually still go back to it. And I formatted my book off that with the idea of kind of exercises versus I wanted there to be more of it. But if this interests anybody, I was saying Practical Intuition by Laura Day, but also Julia Cameron. That's correct, right? Julia Cameron.
Yeah.
Who is married to James Cameron, I believe. Side note, I'm watching The Making of the Abyss right now on YouTube. Would you want to live one day in my head? My head just goes woo, woo, woo. Anyway,
Sounds exciting.
I digress. Perfect detour. But so with this book, though, it unlocks the creativity, and it really is what we're talking about, the intuition. So and I'm able to hear that voice. So cool. So how does, I'm going to throw this just a thing out there. Let's see if it lands. How does gratitude affect intuition, or does it?
I mean, so I think it has a really big impact on your intuition. So I know for myself, I spend a little bit of time every morning. I wake up and I have this sort of routine. And one of the things that I do is I take time before I get out of bed, and I walk through in my head, sort of in this quiet space, of all of the things that I'm grateful for the things that have happened the day before or the week that we're in. And I have been able to notice that when I do that in the morning, I'm able to walk through my day with a little bit more of a clear head. And I think when you have a clear head, you're a little bit more connected to your gut. You're connected more to the universe. You maybe have this a stronger spiritual connection to your source, whatever that is. But I think that when you're able to have gratitude and know and get that sort of out to the forefront, it sort of makes the day more difficult to have a bad day. And if you can't have a bad day, then you're really connected to what you're really supposed to be doing.
Yeah, that's great. Actually, I'm thinking about, usually it's those negative thoughts that get in the way of my intuition. I hadn't even thought about that.
Always.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah,
that's really good.
Always. And I will say, and I just saying this, is that when I don't do this practice, I notice that, and I'm sure Jeff notices too, that I notice that I'm not as on it. I'm not on my game as much, that day. So, and I've heard other people who talk about gratitude. I've heard that's not just something that I've heard myself say. I've heard it on other podcasts where they talk about gratitude and whatnot.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I always say that if there's one thing you want to take from this radio show, about a tool, it's gratitude. Gratitude will help you. So, So Jeff, share with us a little bit about your connection to your intuition and how you activate it.
So gratitude is a great springboard to getting me there, for sure. The intuition, right? You said earlier, is understanding something immediately without the need for reason or conscious reason, I think. And so,
Good
like,
memory.
right, so
Wow.
I have these.
That's good.
So I may have written it down.
He wrote it down.
I was like, wow, that's really good.
But I wrote it down because I think that it's important to understand that. So I have these instincts. If I can talk about both for a second.
Please.
Is that I have these instincts so that when I'm leaving the house this morning to go take the dog to the veterinarian, that I am not pulling into traffic or hitting somebody in the crosswalk or being hit by another car. Right? I have those instincts, these innate instincts. But sometimes they get warped for myself. They get warped by fear or feeling that I don't have enough of.
Right.
So when I switch, when I go to gratitude, when I wake up in the morning and maybe I'm a little grumpy, a little feeling sorry for myself for something from yesterday that I've carried over into today, if I can make good with that, figuring out what's the truth that's really trying to be presented from that sore feeling, I have to clear the day for that. And then if I'm out there, living my life, and using those instincts, not in their natural way that they're serving me, and I'm not serving them. Then I start to become curious about life. For me, it's a quiet. It's not so. For me, it's a little bit different. It's a little, in everyone's experience, I think, is whatever works for yourself, and it continues to change. Is that I get this quiet whisper. It's like right when I'm about ready to fall asleep at night, where it's just like, I'm like, where did that come from? Because I'm really quiet right before I go to bed, so I know it's not me. And so if I'm in gratitude, I'm realizing that there's abundance. There's all these things that the thing is that for anyone listening is that fear makes me so unaware of all the wonderful tools I have to get to work with, whether it's you, whether it's Anthony, whether it's the neighbor next door who I never talked to for 2 years, and now all of a sudden we start talking to each other during COVID, and we find out that there's wonderful experiences we can create together. That's when I get into intuition. And then I'm not judging. And also for me, the last thing I'll say about this is when I'm in intuition, judgment has been removed.
I love that. Yes, 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 and yes. I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry, I was just agreeing. I was like,
no. I
cool.
could go on for a little while, and I don't want to hijack the conversation. So.
Oh, wait, I don't think it's possible, but thank you. So, and you mentioned curiosity, and I was trying to think for myself. Does curiosity actually activate my intuition? And I need to think about that one. I'm not sure if that's a truth for me or not. But that, as you said it, Jeff, my intuition went off saying ding, 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 but I'm not sure why it's saying that. So, and I love that you brought up instincts. And talk to me a little bit, Jeff, about the difference between instincts and intuition for you.
So the instincts, like we said, I guess another way would be like if my hand is on this, like if I'm making dinner really quick and then I'm in a hurry and all of a sudden I realize the burner's up too high and I take my hand off, I feel that there's an instinct to take it off. I think that we sometimes we don't talk about is that we also have instincts for our thoughts and our feelings. You used the word emotion, I think, earlier when you were getting the show started.
Yeah.
And so when my hand gets burned, I take it off quickly. But sometimes when that emotion takes place inside of me, I may discount it and say, no, I'm just going to leave that. And I find that the sooner that I deal with that emotion and not act on it, like not to be like what Skip said earlier, impulsive, but to be like stand kind of maybe that writing we talked about, writing it down, being able to look at it emotionally, kind of unattached to it, like you would like at an airport. We have these control towers, so we're directing these planes. Well, throughout the day, we have all this stimuli coming in, this emotion.
Right.
And if I can get up in that control tower and figure out what's going on, and then moving, because emotions, I think we talk about depression, and that is emotion that gets stuck. It's depressed and not being expressed. And so then if I can deal with that, then those impulses, and then I can get back again into intuition.
Yeah.
And it's not like, it's not all day. It's kind of like that TD Trade, Water Trade, whatever, that investment company. I'm sure people have seen it. The woman wakes up and she gets out of bed and there's a green arrow at her feet. I don't know if you've seen it.
I've not seen it.
And she follows this arrow throughout the day, or we call it being on the bar. Mm-hmm. And if I'm in gratitude, if I'm letting those emotions move me to where they're supposed to move me, I start to see, I think if you and I have talked about these breadcrumbs throughout the day as well, too.
Right.
And the last thing I'll say is that I think is really important is that the thing that can get in my way throughout the day is an expectation. So I have these expectations about how the day is going to go. I have this intention that's set. But the more that I can just kind of enjoy the ride and then be open to and not let the maybe have an intention, but if it doesn't go, maybe it's going to come around tomorrow because we talked about earlier that the world's bigger than just me and you. There's other people that are involved in this puzzle.
Right. It's so interesting, too, with the show being Perfect Detours. I think that I can't see the perfect detour when I'm in perfectionism. And I think my perfectionism, intuition is almost impossible because with most of my intuitive thoughts, there is a sense of what? Like, wait, where did that thought come from? That does not make sense at all. And in my perfectionism, I'm like, I can't do that. I have to stay the course. I need to. So I think that as I get more comfortable with the uncomfortable, more comfortable with making mistakes, with the detours, I think that allows intuition, instincts to flow more. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so on that too, I think, we have to make mistakes in order for us to learn. And I could tell you, especially in my professional life, there have been so many times that I've made mistakes, but instead of looking at them as, dumb me, why did I do that? Or I can't believe it, I can't believe I did that. And then work on myself that way. What I do is when I make a mistake, I use it as a learning lesson to only be better. I always say, I've always said to people, especially as I was growing the event company, where I was always like, we're only as good as our last event. So you produce that event, you do the best job that you can, and then when that's over, you did a great job, but now you've got to start all over because that event is done, it's over. You've got to, take everything that you've learned and reinstate all of those skills and all of those lessons into the next project.
Right. Wow. Very good. Thank you. I want to check with Facebook real quick because I realized that I've not been checking with Facebook, and we don't have anybody who wants to talk to us. I'm very sad. People are not expecting us to be on right now, so I'm not surprised. But anyway,
we have no expectations.
No expectations.
None.
Not at all. Expectations. Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Anthony said about how being done, and earlier you and Skip were talking about how actually your example of the restaurant that you were at, and you just here it is. It's tonight's my last night, and I know for myself that with the farm, with Florida, with these places where I've pivoted, these temples in my life. Anthony and I went back down to Florida together a couple of years ago. And we used to love to go down there, and we got down there. I had to be down there for an actual, I had a meeting I had to be down there for, and we had planned on staying for a couple extra days. And nothing against Florida, spent a lot of years down there, and I loved it. And I got back to the hotel, and he was kind of like melancholy or whatever, and just kind of like not jazzed up. And I was like, I think we're done here. I was like, do you want to leave today? And he was like,
right.
Yeah. The music had honestly stopped playing, and then shortly after that, then a whisper in my ear, like a couple other times have happened before, I just started hearing California, and that led to another detour.
How cool is that? That is so cool. Life is too short. Very cool.
Yeah.
So I was as you were talking, we're talking about kind of the imperfection and failures, quote unquote failures. I just remembered there was a quote, I wanted to look it up, by Michael Jordan. And this, have you heard the one by Michael Jordan about him missing all these shots? Have you heard this? It is such a cool quote. It says, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. So that just popped in. So thank you, Anthony. Awesome. So I know we're coming to the end of our time. So talk to us a little bit about your podcast, Talk Out Loud, and kind of what can we be expecting in the months to come?
Sure. So we're really excited. We've been working really hard this last month to get ready for next season, where we have a variety of different guests lined up. The thing that we can say for sure is that every conversation that we have is going to take a little bit of someone's story and hear like their background, where they're from, what their childhood was like. And then how their experiences work in the world today, and how, outside influences affect them or change them, but really continuing to honor the storytellers that come onto the show, give them a safe space for them to talk openly and honestly about their experience. And our hope that we continue to have, and part of the reason why we started the show, was to teach and inspire other people who are listening through storytelling. So we know that storytelling is an ancient tradition. It's been done forever, and that's how people have learned and have been inspired, or maybe it helps create a space where people get a little bit of quiet time and they hear something that inspires them or leads to an intuitive thought. So that's what we hope we continue to do in season 2.
And I will say that listening to your podcast, that's exactly the experience I have. I usually, and I've told you too before, but when I go running, I will listen to a podcast, and I literally have so many emotions when I'm running with your podcast, and so many thoughts, and I had not really thought about this, but the power of story and the ability for me to see myself a little bit differently. So yes, and I will say that also having been one of your guests, which was quite an honor, that I loved the discussion that we had. That I left the discussion going, wow, I didn't know that about myself, and also the way that you relate to your guest, and specifically my experience, but to all the guests I've heard, you bring people's story to the forefront, and then you turn them just a little bit. And look at them from a different perspective and from your perspective, and then add your story into it, which I've not heard a lot of times on podcasts. So whoever's listening, I would highly suggest getting their podcast. Where can they get it? Because I know I get it on my podcast thing from iTunes, I think. But where else can we get that? Or actually, explain it better than me, because I have no explanation skills in this.
Sure. So the show is available on all major platforms, Apple iTunes, Spotify. If you go to our website, it's www.talkoutloudlive.com. You can listen right on the website, or there's links for you to get to choose your favorite platform to listen to the show on. So
very, very cool. And I know that you two are also on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And by the way, you two are great at your social media presence. So I am watching, taking notes. So anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show. Again, thank you for the work that you're doing, and we wish you the best of luck.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really enjoy your show. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we're going to take a break real quick, and then we'll come back with some final thoughts. You're listening to Perfect Detours with me, Bob Kiser, on WGHC 98.3.
This is Skip Sams, Program Director here at WGHC 98.3 FM. We are your community radio station, and we are here to be your voice for change. Please consider making a donation today on our website at WGHCradio.org. That's WGHCradio.org. Happy holidays!
It's that time of year when the world falls in love. Every song here seems to say, Merry Christmas, may your New Year dreams come true. And this song of mine in 3/4 time wishes you and yours the same thing too.
Welcome back. It's Bob Kiser with Perfect Detours. We just finished with our guest, Anthony Navarro and Jeff Miller from Talk Out Loud podcast, talking about intuition and instincts and all those kind of good things, and kind of how they relate to our perfect detours. So I think that one of the big takeaways was this idea of gratitude and how it activates. And I had not really thought about this before the conversation. And I think in my life that, again, that gratitude gets rid of the negativity and allows then me to hear that inner voice. It fascinates me every time how those the loud ego-driven, fear-driven voices in my head, they're quite loud compared to the more centered, peaceful thoughts. I always think of the peaceful thoughts are like, oh, I'll wait, or the intuition's like, okay, I'll wait. I don't need to force my agenda, while my fear-driven thoughts are just like, let me in there, let me talk. So I think there is something to this journaling and meditating that allows us to connect to to our intuition. I think that some people, when we talk about intuition, are like, think of it as this, wooey psychic type thing. And I just want to reiterate that I think all of us have had intuition. And I know that intuition for me really appeared in, like, when I was in theater and directing and choreography. Like, my mind, I just knew the answers to stuff. I didn't know why. There was sometimes I'd be directing a scene and it just wouldn't be working. I'd be like, you know what? Put your scripts, let's go to a different scene. Put your scripts down and let's go do a dance. And then all of a sudden it would just click and I'd be like, oh, you know what? Stop. Everyone go back to the scene. I know what we need to do. And it would just hit me. And I think in those moments that it is the ability to let go of what Jeff was talking about, those expectations of how it should be, how I should think about things, how I should come up with the answer, and allowing for some space and some breath around that. Maybe I don't know what the answer is yet. And then it usually pops in. And for me also, when I'm running, I will have those inspired moments. This week, I invite you just to dive into this concept, and there's literally no risk with it. Just notice it, when those thoughts pop in. And I will also warn, because when I'm working with people in coaching situations, that they will come in and go, I had this great idea. There's like this huge, like, kind of like this force behind it, that I think that our emotions, our adrenaline sometimes can mimic for some, that feeling of maybe an intuitive thought. And again, I go back to my intuitive thoughts, and I loved what Jeff said. I think maybe Anthony said this about that intuition. There's no judgment, and that meaning good or bad, it just is. And for me, that has been my experience. So this week, just notice when you have those moments, or reflect back in your life about how intuition showed up in your life. And especially with those detours, there's a lot of detours in my life that happened because of my intuition. I didn't know at the time why I was doing it. My parents mentioned so everyone knows I'm adopted, or if you've not listened, now you know I'm adopted. And I met my adopted parents when I was 3. And my mother had just passed away, and I was living with my father in Bloomington Normal. And my adopted parents said, my dad, George Kiser, tells a story about how he and my mom were supposed to go to Texas from Colorado. That was what the plan was. And if you knew my parents, they follow the plans. They're professors. They're very, they follow the rules. they plan to go there. And then all of a sudden, this opportunity came up in Illinois, at Illinois State University. And my dad says he's not quite sure why, but he's like, we got to go to Illinois. And then they met me, and they literally saved my life and changed my life. And then they adopted me when I was 15. And that was just a divinely inspired moment. And I'm so grateful that my father had that, intuition or that instinct to just react. So yeah, those are my thoughts for the week and for our discussion. The last thing that I was going to talk about, and just again, we were kidding at the beginning of the show, but I think in the holidays is when I think about all the things I'm grateful for. And 2020 has been quite a year for everybody, but I'm so grateful for this opportunity to have this show on this station, particularly because Skip has talked about the mission for this station being really to bring community together, to allow us a voice to have these kind of discussions that we just had tonight. And this station is in dire need of support. And so I just want to put out there again that this is the perfect time to be donating. Again, I know I'm thinking about taxes coming up in January, February, March, and it's a tax write-off. But it's also to support our station. And this is really our station for us to have a voice in a world that I feel like voices are being they're being crushed a little bit more and more every day, or the realities are getting changed for people, whatever those are, whatever you want to take that to mean. And so this station really is, and as I've talked to Skip off the air and even on the air, that the mission here is to give us a voice. So I would really be sad to have this disappear for all of us. So, and again, if you have an idea for a show, Skip's open and encouraging for all that to present itself.
So where do they give, Bobby?
So that's a great question. I guess that's a really good point too, isn't it? We should know where to give.
Yeah. Do you know?
I do know. So you can go to our website, WGHCradio.org. And on the homepage, there is on the homepage at the bottom, there is a section where you can give to the station. And again, it'll be a tax write-off, but again, WGHCradio.org. And you can, on the homepage, go to the bottom and give to support the station. Also, the website, you can see about all of the shows. You can learn about us, the hosts, and the like. You can also, I'm sure there's a place, actually, I don't know this, but I think on the
There is.
website, you can send us messages.
I knew you were going to say it was my intuition.
You know what? You're psychotic. I'm sorry, psychic.
Well, you can be both. Some say I'm schizophrenic.
That joke. That is awesome.
Yeah. Well, if you know me, you know it's true.
You're not.
Yeah.
No.
Schizophrenic. I'm so
Skip. Yes.
Get it? Get it?
Yes. Yeah, true.
So if they want to do a show, how do they let me know?
Well, I would say probably go to the website, and there's a form there, I'm assuming, and they click on that and say, "Hey, Skip, I want to do a show."
Or program director at WGHCradio.org.
Oh, I got
and
plus.
it actually works because we have our new fabulous engineer who actually heard me announcing this one day on one of our live shows. And so if you are listening and you're like, oh, no, he doesn't want to hear from me. Actually, yes. And if you don't have a show, or if you don't, whatever you have, if you have an idea or if you have time to give, oh my goodness, there's a lot to do here. We're cleaning up. I need some painting done.
Yeah.
Yep.
Lots of great opportunities.
We used to say we got to save the station and feel like, but now I don't feel that anymore. No, I mean, I'm starting to feel like, even the last week, I'm starting to feel like, no, we got to grow the station.
Right.
And I'm like, that consciousness level is actually really changing, like growing the station.
Skip, I've not asked you this. How did intuition play into your working here, or even any of your work here? I know you're in the weeds, so probably.
How
does it, or does it?
Can you re-ask
Sure.
the question?
So I'm wondering about intuition and how it plays into either you coming on board here or even in your work here, because you're really connected to this station. Like this is your passion. Like we've had several conversations, and so my gut is in our passions, or when we are in the groove of what we're supposed to be doing, our intuition is activated. So I'm wondering, how does your intuition play into your work here?
That's a good question. That's a loaded question. I mean, because when I first had the opportunity, I didn't want it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I did not want it. And then it was like getting in tune and listening to that gut feeling. And it was like, dude, the universe is like, you've been praying for what to do, and the universe is like
it's delivering it on a silver platter.
So right here, there's an FM radio station that needs, and I didn't think I was capable, but I guess now that's tuning in to, okay, so now I'm into it. I'm into it. I'm into it.
Really good.
I know. We got to write that down, man.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. That's in our that's going to be in our workshop in February.
Oh, good.
Into it. but I'm just really starting to see, like, I was learning so much and doing all the little tiny things, right? And now that it's deeper, I get into it, and it's like, let's grow the station. I'm really realizing that I'm not the engineer. I'm not the editor. I love doing these things, but I really don't have time to do them. And
Right.
that's actually a good sign to me. That's what's been a good sign to, like, let it go.
Elsa, just
And
let it go.
let it go and delegate. And so I'm becoming more in tune as I get into it.
Love it. Tune as you get into it. And tune, that's so interesting because frequency, like when you're in tune or out of tune, and with in tune, it does seem like everything just flows. That's very interesting. I was thinking back too about the day that I saw you on the street. Remember we were on Broadway and I was eating at
You were with your boyfriend.
Edgewater Tacos. Yeah, I was with my boyfriend. I was gonna say partner, boyfriend. I'm like, we always have these discussions like, is it a partner? Is it a boyfriend? I just gotta say he's the sweetest guy too. So my birthday's coming up and he just
When's your
told
birthday?
me it's January 12th.
Oh, okay. You're a Capricorn.
Oh, I'm definitely a Capricorn.
Yeah,
Anyone who
yeah.
knows me,
No, it makes sense.
I don't even know what that means, but all my friends are like, you are such a Capricorn.
Yeah.
But he just surprised me with my birthday gift, and I was like, I'm literally the luckiest guy, and that's a good play for intuition, like how we connected.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I'm not going to date. I don't want to date. I have no desire to date, and all of a sudden I found myself, hanging out with this guy, and we were like just at the same functions, and all of a sudden, literally, we were at dinner. This is hysterical. We were at dinner, and I asked him a question about future like partner stuff, and I was like, stop, don't answer that. He's like, what? I'm like, oh, I have a crush on you. It was like this intuitive, like, oh no, I don't want to date. And it was so funny. I don't know how he's going to feel about me telling that story, but it was true.
Well, it's adorable. Why not?
He's adorable. Like,
Yeah,
how could you
he
not?
is.
Like, anyway. So but I was thinking about when I saw you at Edgewater Tacos,
Yes, I was
I was
taking
with Brian.
pictures for
Yeah.
the station.
and I remember you kind of looking at me, and they were just looking at like, wait a minute, you need to do a program. And I remember thinking, so I don't know how your experience was, but for me, I was like, and that was an intuitive moment of like, usually I really think about stuff, and I was just like, yeah, makes sense. And like, boom, like I've not really thought at all about this program. Like, should I do it? Should I not do it? It's just been very easy and like this intuitive, like, well, duh, of course.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of intuition too. I think.
Mhm.
Those are my thoughts. For the
You're
day.
into it.
I'm into it.
You're into it.
Okay, I think you get two more uses of that, and then it just becomes a dad joke. And I'm kidding.
I don't know. It's really good though. Why haven't we heard that before? I'm sure somebody said it.
I'm sure. Well, I don't know. You should trademark it. And
Yeah,
do whatever you
right,
do with it
right.
and
You're fired.
Write a book.
I know. I don't even know. I was just thinking of somebody stupid trying to trademark something people say all the time. I don't know
Right.
what I'm talking about though. That's
It's
I'm
literally
turning my mic off.
yeah. It's this is later than we ever tape, and we're just getting slap happy. So it's time for us to wrap this up, and I am grateful, as I keep mentioning all these things. I'm grateful for Skip Sams, who is the producer extraordinaire here at the
Love you,
program.
mean it.
Love you, mean it. Seriously. And he's providing such opportunities for so many people. So thank you for the work you're doing. I'm grateful that whoever is listening, that you've tuned in. And I look forward. I keep saying this, and it is going to happen. I want to get a conversation started with the community. And I know it can be kind of scary to think I have to call in on the radio and talk on the radio. And I want to get rid of that, because we're just people here talking, sharing. And as Anthony and Jeff so poignantly said, is that we grow with each other's stories. So by you sharing your stories, I can't wait to grow. So if you want to find more of me, my website is bobkaisercoaching.com. I'm also on Facebook. Bob Kaiser Coaching is my coaching page. But also, I mean, I'm pretty much an open book, so you can look at my profile too. It's Bob Kaiser and parentheses Bobby Wentz. So everyone knows I was adopted, and Bobby Wentz is for those people who knew me when I was a kid. So, and I've been making a lot of connections recently with people from my childhood. It's really cool. And the other thing I'll share is that it's so funny because Lisa, who who wrote in on Facebook. I had this one image of how people thought of me and just all this negative things. And with Lisa one time, I was talking about like something negative about myself, and she was like, "No, I don't remember any of that. I just thought you were so cool and so much fun to play with." And I was like, "Huh, so interesting." So it's been my experience. But anyway, you can find me on Facebook. And then Instagram. Skip's just looking at me. I go off on these tangents, but you gotta love me. Anyway, so Instagram and also Twitter, Bob Kiser Coach. So I wish you the most intuitive filled week. I cannot wait to hear about your experiences. Please feel free to email me. My email address, you can go to my website and you can email me or send me a message at the station. I will get it. And please, I want to hear about your experiences. I again thank Anthony Navarro and Jeff Miller from Talk Out Loud podcast as my guest. I thank them for all their wisdom and sharing their experiences with us. I highly suggest going to hear their podcast. It is such a service to the LGBTQIA plus community. And even if you're not part of that community and just, what is it? I'm going to say an advocate, but what is the word? Ally.
Ally.
I knew it began with an A. In my head, I'm like, starts with, an ally or whoever. The stories are amazing. Trust me. Just trust. But I wish you the best week, and I look forward to chatting with everyone next week.